We've heard from others so far through this podcast recording that there was an intentional prioritization of communities and community organizations, or even researchers from the academic institutions to think about how to orient communities in the center of their work through the IRL program. With the benefit of your experience at IRL and all your career, can you share with us how your concept of community engaged research might have evolved? So it's a similar question from before, but drilling down specifically to community engaged research. What lessons have you learned about how to execute this well?
Well, I think it's always something that I'm learning, right? Like, I don't think there's an endpoint to it. So, but I think as it's evolved for me, coming into the program and just even my own experience, there were tensions, what it means to do community work, period, right? So I think on the one hand, kind of neighborhood and community population level, when we're trying to think about population health, neighborhoods are great organizing kind of scales, right? To kind of go deeper into. But, a neighborhood isn't necessarily the only way you define communities. I think there's multiple communities inside communities. And so
Right.
just really being able to kind of say, well, how are we defining community and how do we wrestle with what that looks like from the research perspective was something that was also a through line, I think, from those early days of IRL and probably continuing. When I think about community work, there's a lot of ways that it can be structured as people oriented or place based or somewhere in between or some combination of those things. And so when there's a couple of different adages that I've heard for many, many years. It's if it's about us, but not with us, it's not for us, right? So like that really what comes through with community engagement and community engaged, community-based participatory research for sure. But there's also a tension kind of in community development work where if you focus on people-oriented strategies or interventions, oftentimes people improve their lives and move out of neighborhoods. Simultaneously, if you only focus on place-based activities, you make investments and you force people out. And so it's like holding that tension, I think, becomes both important from a community investment and community development kind of standpoint, as well as a community research kind of perspective as well. And so I find that in all of that work for me in my career, there's an immediacy when working with community, whether you're working individually. My most recent position was with a large scale nonprofit organization providing affordable housing and supportive housing being a key piece of that. It's a day-to-day experience. And so the immediacy of even trying to engage residents or develop a resident survey is something that has to be so relevant in the moment and creating space where you're playing kind of a short game and a long game simultaneously. And so just thinking about, well, how does research then kind of intersect with that is like a really interesting question that I don't think I've found a great answer for, but I definitely used a lot of the experience at IRL thinking about like, how do I guide evaluation work for this organization? How do I think about the infrastructure that's needed for resident surveys or other kind of continued work? So I just hope that's what a lot of the folks who were participating in IRL are taking with them, especially from a community partner standpoint. Like, how do I think about that infrastructure and those relationships that kind of continue this work over time?